This is Andy from Mantic Games, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. So much universe, so little time.
My name is Alessio, and I used to be alive, but I am now very much dead. I am going to tell you a story of death, sweet death. They came, and they came in great numbers, but my mistress smiled. She had already planted their dreams in the minds of men and the elves. It was for men who first rode out to meet the Green Horde. They didn't know it, but dark magic was at play, helping them, suggesting to them, telling them of a danger, and making them feel invincible. The forces of men rode out to meet them, the Green Invaders, and after much carnage they were spent. The Horde turned away from the battle, only to continue their march the next day, coming closer and closer, but only to find a new enemy in their path. It had not been easy for my mistress to turn the minds of the elves, but turn their minds she did. They too rode out with their warriors in resplendent armor, and of course their many dragons, noble dragons, unaware that they too were doing the work of my dark mistress. And yes, they suffered. Oh, how they suffered! And the orc horde, much smaller, and now more desperate, and very vulnerable. But cry not for the fallen elves and the armies of men, sweet listener. My mistress will visit their fields soon, to raise them to join our glorious legions, the legions of the sleepless and the ever enduring.
Welcome, you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. Today's episode we'll be talking about the largest Kings of War tournament that was just held in Australia, Clash of Kings 2024, but with a twist. We'll be following the Skar Orcs in, and for this, I'm joined by Chris and Walt, all the way from Australia. First thing, Walt, is who was that creepy bloke we just heard?
Danny, that intro that we just heard is the continuing storyline of the Skar Orcs that emerged from me taking to Australia Clash. And, being a narrative player at heart, I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to take some of the best moments out of the games I played over those 2 days to grow the background story of the Skar Orcs and help decide what they're going to do next.
So for me, this is super interesting. So previously we've talked about the 4 different kinds of player, right? Based on the 4 different suits of a card deck. And Walt is a spade, which is a narrative gamer at heart. So what happens, and I think this is absolutely fascinating, what happens when a narrative gamer goes to the lion's den of a competitive gaming tournament That's where the diamonds hang out. And let's be honest, there'll be some clubs too. And dear listener, if none of this is making any sense, please listen back to our Mup Shorts on narrative specials. We're not explaining it all again. I think we're deep enough in now that people will go with us. So I think this is absolutely fascinating.
Hi, this is Alessio Cavatore, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. So many universes, so little time.
And so your Skar Orcs, Walt, from the lovely little part you put up on the Facebook page, I read that the Skar Orcs were based around the salt flats. Obviously, I can't imagine there's much water around salt flats, and even big smelly orcs need to drink, and animals need to drink as well, so there's not going to be much for them to eat. So sooner or later, they're going to have to move. So I read your little story, moving forward, sending out the scouts, using the shamans, performing rituals to find out which direction they're supposed to go in, fighting off kingdoms of men forces, fighting against the elves, getting through the mountain passes, and then what happened to them from then on?
This storyline emerges, obviously, from my experience of the armies that I played in Clash of Kings. And it goes something like this. I mean, let's face it, I faced 3 undead armies and then a Night Stalkers on top of that, and then some elves and, armies of men. So out of that emerged the storyline, which really is the key opponent here are the forces of the undead. So what's going on here? And I think Alessio really explains this, right? We get an insight. The orcs sort of like know what's going on, but the other races don't. The orcs are migrating west. They're getting closer and closer to some of the undead lands, and some dark power is throwing everything in their way. And that dark power is the Dark Mistress. And we'll talk about her a little bit later. But she has somehow gotten into the minds of the elves and men to march out and basically take on the orcs. And it was the League of Erodia that went out and faced the orcs. And then the next day, the elves with their Drakon riders, and lots of them, also took a bite out of the orcs. And after that, it was Night Stalkers, and then undead and undead and undead as they get closer and closer to the heartland of the dead. And that's who that creepy bloke is, because he's telling us the Dark Mistress is behind this.
This is super fascinating. So game 1, Walt, so this was you against the League of Rordia. So was this was just the local Rordia army that were trying to stop the migration of the Skar Orcs, is that right? Yeah.
And they felt, apparently, according to Alessio, the Dark Chronicler, they felt invincible. Yeah, they rode out against the Green Horde. They did a great job, I must admit, because they took out quite a few orcs.
3 hordes of honor guard, backed up by 3 wizards, a battle shrine, 2 quite hard infantry hordes, and a couple of winged nasties.
Good stuff.
So how did the narrative of that particular battle play?
And what was the scenario,
Danny,
Walt, if you remember? Sorry.
This was really about invade, and we should have been doing the invading bit, but we really hit the Skar Orcs hit a wall here, and this was a fairly fast-moving army, and wasn't light on, and the chariots. Morglum's chariots didn't charge first. They hesitated. There was somebody getting into his ears, and he was distracted and wasted time. Drak and the wing slasher sat on a hill and watched it all for a little bit too long. But really, the standout here is the God Speakers. They weren't mucking around. They just moved forward. And those 2 dukes on the winged arrowlizards, they just got hammered by the God Speakers. We don't care about the rest of you, but you 2 are departing the scene today. And they did.
So they were trying to fly around your infantry and your God Speakers with their fireballs, just running around, burning the doggies.
Yeah, and the God Speakers were
flailing
relentless.
feathers, beautiful.
So the Rordian army, they marched home, but without their dukes, their beloved dukes.
No, their dukes lay in the dust. And honestly, the God Speakers, Zork gave them fireballs, and that's all he gave them, and said, don't stand back and get out there. And they did, and they took out those dukes. The League of Brodia, even though they won the day, they were very sad. There's one royal family with 2 less dukes.
Fantastic. So then so after this battle, Walt, the Skar Orcs, so their advance was checked. So did they change direction? What happened next? Did they have a bit of a meeting on the field and say, hey guys, buck your ideas up?
Yeah, they did. There was a bit of a regrouping that took place. I mean, the sun set. The Orc horde retreated, licked its wounds, thought about what was going on. And quick meeting, but there was no choice in this, right? We need to keep moving west.
We can't go backwards.
No backwards. None of this 2 steps back, 1 forward. That doesn't work. So into it again. Skarnek gathered the forces, told the God Speakers to eat more toadies and get into it. And the next day, they went back on the line of march, and Kingdoms of Men weren't there because they were obviously burying their dukes. But a new enemy appeared, and this time it was elves and a lot of dragons.
Yep, you've got 2 Gladestalker regiments, you've got a Sea Guard horde to face, 2 regiments of Shamblers, some Stormwind cavalry, a Drakon horde, bolt thrower, an Elven king and a horsey. You've got an Archmage with some nasty spells, and then you've got the Drakon regiment formation. So again, you're going to get outdistanced and charged first there, aren't you, Walt?
Oh, Danny, you're reliving the pain of the Skar Orcs. Because really, this
pain. We're talking about shame. Have you seen the size of an elf compared to an orc? It's shame, Walt. Shame.
We look at lessons learned at the moment.
So the horde is shambling forward, but yeah, the rapid again. You've just been outsped, haven't you? So they've got the charge on you. Hammer into the horde as it's shambling forward.
The Swirling Tempest formation, I mean, that's regiments of Drakon riders flying and the Lord on the Drakon. I mean, the decision that was made here on the battlefield was the Skar Orcs decided we needed to engage early and fast as we can. And, of course, elves can shoot a long way. Steady aim, piercing. So quite a few orcs fell on the way in. And, of course, that opened up flanks, and I think that's where the Drakon riders took the advantage. Protecting flanks is very difficult when you've got holes in them. And that's exactly what's happened here.
So they're those big bases. They're hard to protect at the best of times, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I guess Orcs are speed 5, I guess?
Speed 5. Yes.
Yeah, it's a rough ride, isn't it, Danny, to be honest?
Yeah. A good player can do it. But in my particular case, it was a learning thing. We tried our best, and once again, the things that made a difference was Skarnek, played by the Gakamak figure, very powerful. He really can stand on his own, and he can turn a battle. Once again, the God Speakers were out there with their fireballs. 12 inches is not a long way, so they had to really walk right up to the elves and sock it to them, they did.
So what was the mission for this game?
Fool's Gold. So this particular one is where at the end of round 3, all the bluff counters are flipped over and they become your objectives, and some of them are not an objective at all. I placed mine. I knew where the winning objective was. I just couldn't get to it anymore. My chariots were spent. The Drakon riders basically decimated them. He could get to his objectives, had plenty of movement to get there. Life wasn't looking good for the Skar Orcs. 2 battles, and they ended up with a bloody nose on both of them.
And on to battle 3 against the noble undead. So we're going to have Jarvis leading the bunch, and they're up against 2 regiments of revenants, 3 troops of wraiths, 2 regiments of soul reaver infantry, nasty. Got some zombie troll horde, horde of wights, 2 troops of revenant cavalry, Jarvis, and he's helped out by a leash king and 2 necromancers. So how did this battle go?
Well, retribution. Yeah.
Good man.
Retribution.
And sorry, before you dive into it, this list looks really nasty. Really, really nasty to play against. It's all good stuff, isn't it?
The Orcs had enough. It was time to get some revenge. And yes, these were the undead, and they were different again, and we learned a lot of things. I'll just summarise it very quickly because we could spend a lot of time talking about this game because it was a good game. And Simon, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you. That was a great game, mate. Yeah. There were hordes of zombie trolls, wights, revenant cavalry. And what did I learn? Life leech, shambling. So this was new. This was new for the Orcs, and went, wow. And we learned that wights and zombies are really tough to chew through. And the wraiths who fly are even tougher. So what we found was the Orcs were just hitting them, and really, I thought, but they were in their element. They took off their shields, got their axes out, and went, right, that's what it's going to be like, right? We're going to hack our way through this, and that's exactly what they did. The Orclings got out of the way and went, this is all too much for us. Thank you very much. The God Speakers, once again, pushed through everybody, went to the front, looked these undead in the eyes. I don't know if they got eyes, yeah. And
some of them do.
And fireballs went in all different directions. I suppose the last thing to say about this is Skarnek, which was the Gakemak model, he just went on a personal mission. Him and Drac on the Wing Slasher, they went out and said, let's kill every necromancer we can get to. With the exception, I think, of the Lich King, I think they did a pretty good job.
I've got a lot of personal love for Jarvis. I did a tournament with him once, and against my friends Abyssal Dwarves, got absolutely decimated. The entire army just all went wrong. Apart from Jarvis was left stood in the middle of the battlefield on his own, and he survived for 2 whole turns of the entire army shooting at him. Literally, he must have just been burnt flesh by the end of it, but he lived. He literally dodging fireballs, everything, and absolutely love him.
That's all right. Next day, he can just raise another army. He's good.
Yeah,
He's
that's right.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you this, Danny. On this particular occasion, Jarvis didn't make it. The God Speakers actually made a decision that once they found his body, to basically cut him up, and every one of the chieftains got a piece. So
you're a cruel man, Walt. You're a cruel man.
What can I say? Retribution.
How do they decide who gets which bit? Is it a first come, first serve kind of a situation?
We don't want to talk about this, do we?
Is it more of like a buffet?
I go for the heart, I think. That would be the way to go, wouldn't it?
Stop there.
Well, fortunately, game 4 is against Night Stalkers, and you can't really eat them. So in this game, you're up against some doppelgangers, 2 regiments and a horde of scarecrows, a troop of reapers, a regiment and horde of butchers, 2 regiments of ravagers, a troop of shadowhounds, soulflayers, 2 mind screeches, 1 of each type, a shadow hulk, Shakira, and a butcher flesh ripper, which is that's quite an unusual Night Stalker army. I've not seen one quite like that before. Like that? So how did you do there, Walter?
The Orcs thought, well, what's the difference? Night Stalkers undead, they're all a bit weird. And that was their mistake, because the Night Stalkers are totally different. It was a close game, but in the end, it all fell a little bit apart. This is where the Skar Orcs learnt about mind thirst. When you have something that's using your own inspiring against you, that's a little bit tough if you're not aware of that. And we became very quickly aware of that. I think the big takeaway for us was we were constantly being pushed back. Wind blast was coming from all directions, pushing us off our objectives, and it really enraged the orcs. And the God Speakers once again went out the front and said, "We've had enough of this. Fireballs is going off in all different directions, but not enough of them." The big surprise in this whole game was the largest unit, which was Skarnik's Horde. This was a horde of great axes, the most powerful unit in the orc army. All of a sudden went head-to-head with doppelgangers. And that's where we learned what doppelgangers were. It was basically fighting against ourselves, fighting back with our attacks and all the other great things that we were throwing at them. So we had to chew through those, and we did. But in the end, the Night Stalkers did win that game.
And then on to game 5.
Sorry, guys. I would find it hilarious if doppelgangers were fighting against doppelgangers.
One of the
I'm mirroring you. No, I'm mirroring you.
One of the local guys who I play against took an entire army of doppelgangers. It was he had a lot. It was stupid, but he had a lot of fun doing it.
Game 5.
Yeah.
Danny?
Up against Craig. You had a horde of skeleton warriors. Beautiful. We don't see enough of them. 2 troops of ghouls, a regiment of wraiths, 2 regiments of wights, regiment of soul reaver cavalry. Nice. A ghoul ghast, a leash king, Lady Alona, a vampire and Pegasus, and a shambling blight, which is 2 legions of zombies and a gore blight.
Sorry, guys, can I just jump in? There's a lot of fun lists here. And as you said, Danny, kind of it's not the stuff you always see taken. There's some really interesting choices being made here.
This is Max McDougall saying, so much universe, so little time.
Well, I think Danny mentioned the Night Stalkers. It's not the stuff you always see. And I think this is true with this undead list as well, right? There's the Lich King, there's Lady Alona, there's the Vampire on Pegasus. It's, there's just... These are just fun. They just look like fun, interesting lists to play and to play against. Just looks like a lot of fun.
I've taken Lady Alona in tournaments before. She's fantastic, but she's not worth for the amount of points that she's worth.
Yeah, so many
You can take
points.
a lot of better stuff, but she's just fun to have on the battlefield. Defense 6, running around with those 8 attacks. Did Gakamak face her face to face?
No.
Oh dear.
So we'll exactly.
That would have been a perfect narrative for the end of the tournament.
Oh, absolutely.
What happened in the game?
This one was close, and this was all games were great, but this was the standout game. This is the game upon which the storyline is now built. Lady Alona plays a part. She is the genesis of the Dark Mistress. This is where the God Speaker, Thunder, stood out in front of a legion of zombies and said, "Thou shalt not pass," in Orc. And he held them up. Eventually, Alona decided she'd had enough of this God Speaker and she would take care of him. And, of course, he kept backing up and throwing fireballs at her. And I think he threw about 4 rounds of fireballs at Lady Alona. And I don't think her mascara was smudged. He survived. She survived. This was a close game. And what I learned here is game turn 7 is a killer when you don't want it. And I rolled for game turn 7. And up until that point, it was a draw. 1 loot token more than what the Orcs had, and therefore we didn't carry the day. But it was a great game.
Beautiful. And it says your last game, I don't have a list for this, but it's against the TO Nick. So, Empire of Dust. What happened there?
The Empire of Dust, this was played in a bit slower time because it was the last game and against the TO. And I just said to Nick, I think I need to get some things right here. And he was really kind. And he said, Walt, you know what, let's just slow it down a little bit. And it was a great game to end the tournament on. This was all about dominate. So it was really about unit strength in the middle of the board. And what I learnt there was and Nick's an excellent player in terms of positioning and waiting for the charge to go in at the right time. And that's the lesson I learnt during that game. So, Nick, you're listening. Thank you so much. I wish I'd played this game at the start because I could have used some of those tactics in the other games. So it was great.
But that's just part of playing. If you learn something new in every game, even if it's how to win, how to lose, just how to position something slightly different, as long as you learn one little thing from a game, then it's worth it.
It was a pleasure just playing against these armies. And at the end of it, I thought to myself, I need to do more of this.
Fantastic. Well, and so, okay, so at the end of the story then, well, the ongoing story, but the end of the tournament, where did we finish with the Skar Orcs? Where were they and what's next?
The Mantic Universe podcast. So much universe and so little time.
Yes?
My lady, the orc has escaped.
And how is that, my sweet little creature?
The great lizard broke free from its chains and tore apart our necromancers. There is nothing left. It ate every piece of them.
Well, it's going to be very hard to put them back together again, eh? My little dove. And the orc rider.
The lizard ripped out the bars of the prison tower and they have flown back to their camp.
And of course, we have sent out the bats and vultures to follow them to their camp, haven't we?
They were eaten in mid-flight, Mistress. I am...
Well, that didn't go well for someone. Our storyline continues. Drac the Slash Rider and his wing slasher Snarl had been taken captive in the last battle. Snarl has managed to somehow overcome the necromancers guarding him, and he's freed the Slash Rider. They've escaped, and they're returning to the Skar Orc camp with valuable information. The Dark Mistress is not impressed.
Now you need to go and find somebody who's got an undead army, willing to play a loner, and chase the orcs down and have a rematch, don't you, Walt?
Yeah.
It sounds like your Crudger on Winged Beast got a bit of a slap in the actual game, got imprisoned, and is now free. So when you play games and characters die, it's kind of like how do I justify them being in the next game? But they can just be knocked out. You can carry on. They can be captured, and then they can be freed for the next one. So
you're
it's
spot
not a matter
on.
of what went down. It's a matter of what happens next.
Skarnek will know a bit more about who's behind all of this, and which really brings us to the next part, which is what's next for the Skar Orcs.
How many? asked Skarnek in a low grunt. Too many, my lord, replied Narek, his lieutenant. Morgrim's chariots are broken. The bones of the dead choked their wheels until the Gauls could pull them no more. He paused. The crews had to fight through the avalanche of the stinking corpses that followed. Not many survived, but there is good news, my lord. Skarnek turned slowly to receive it. Morgrim's orcs are already building the battle wagons. The hardened dead trees in this place are perfect for his use, he said. And of the humans and the elves, asked Skarnek.
No sign, my lord. They are afraid to come into these lands. For some of them, the thought of eternal death is too much. They are weak and fearful.
Skarnek smiled. It was a smile that Narek had seen many times before, and just before a battle of some kind.
Well, it is quiet around here,
said Skarnek.
And now we can deal with them, one at a time.
Narek smiled back at him, unconsciously unhooking his war axe from his dented, bloody shields.
Call the god speakers and tell them to start the enchantments to protect the camp,
he started.
And tell the trollmasters to gather the headstones of their stinking graves for our catapults. We're going to need them, because we're home.
The realm of the undead will now be the home of the Skar Orcs. They are going to conquer the undead, and this place will become theirs.
Well, orcs love fighting, and what's better than an enemy that once you kill them, they get back up and you can have another go. It's like an endless game of whack-a-mole. You could just put that orc there and just be happy all day, just bludgeoning away.
Yeah.
Kind of unfortunate that you wait all the necromancers now.
Danny, the aim here is not just to fight some battles and win. The aim here is to rid this landscape of the undead. And if they're successful, the Skar Orcs are about to build an orc empire in the middle of human and elven lands. Apparently, a few strange creatures have been spotted in Skarnek's camp. There have been sightings of an envoy of the mountain orcs, the Moradin.
I think that sounds like an absolutely brilliant excuse to paint up a load of new units and go back to Clash of Kings next year and do it all again.
Yeah, I'm just imagining them now. So they've been, on their migration. They've been trekking. They've been able to only take what they can carry, probably, and as we said earlier, sort of, pushing the herd of animals along with them for food, etc. But now potentially, they might have mines. They might be able to settle and form a settlement, maybe by a river. They're going to have all sorts of potential resources. As Walt said, they are inviting other tribes to migrate there and form a confederation or whatever you would call it. And so there's a lot of potential there, isn't there, for the next step of their evolution, really, in the story.
I don't know if it's too early to reveal this, but Tunda, the God Speaker, he's the God Speaker that does the rituals for the Skar Orcs, and he's not been feeling too well in the last few days. He's been found hallucinating and gurgling words and things like that.
We all have weeks like that.
Yeah, well, in his case, he's incomprehensible, and the only words that people seem to understand that are coming out of him is demon.
And while you were there, did you sort of get chatting and find a couple of semi-local Canberra-ites?
Yeah.
To get some more games in?
The good thing about losing games is you very quickly find your level of player. I've got a couple of good contacts now. We had a lot of fun, and I think we're going to have some competitive narrative games, and this is where I want to play the Skar Orcs and also play undead forces. That's where we're at.
Oh, this is really exciting, Walt. Fantastic. It's really I'm really excited to see what happens next. Super. Right, where are we in the notes?
Paragraph 3. How was Clash of Kings?
Come on, Walt, tell us. What happened to you at Clash of Kings? Who did you face? How well did you do? Because I've been looking through the army lists that you were facing, and none of them were really that scary, and you only won one game. So what happened there?
Oh, Danny, come on now. Come on.
For a diamond, they weren't scary. Oops.
Have we got to the... It was...
Actually, that's not bad, is it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not bad at all.